Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Paradise Lost. By John Milton. John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost was originally published in 1667. Over 10,000 lines of verse were included in the original version of the poem. In a subsequent edition, the poem was divided into a total of 12 volumes. According to many academics, this is Milton's greatest work and cements him as one of the greatest English poets ever. As the story of man's fall is told through the eyes of muses, Milton is able to understand how these events unfold. While reading Milton's depiction of Satan's fall from grace, the creation of Jesus and Adam and Eve's eviction from the Garden of Eden, the reader is provided with Milton's interpretation of these events. This storytelling device is commonly employed by Milton to introduce new sections and explain the story's main points. The epic poem begins with Milton announcing the subject matter of his work. Our first act of rebellion against God and the ensuing chain of events are what we'll be discussing. Disobedience began with Adam and Eve's sinful deed of eating the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. The tree of knowledge in Eden is where the forbidden fruit dangles. The poet provides a brief recap of this tale, which initially appeared in the Bible's first book, Genesis. A direct result of Adam and Eve's deeds is what Milton refers to as the fruit of the forbidden tree. This is a brilliant play on the word fruit, which can refer to both the results of one's deeds and a specific fruit itself. As a result of this initial sin, Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden and death was introduced to humanity for the first time. As a result, human people have been exiled from paradise until the second coming of Christ, when they will be returned to their original state of purity. This poem is sung to Milton by a muse he summons. It's not one of the Greek mythological muses, but rather the muse that inspired Moses to receive the Ten Commandments and write Genesis, according to this author's description. The Holy Spirit, according to Milton's muse, is the heavenly inspiration that gave birth to the Christian Bible. Due to the devoutness of his inspiration, his poetry and muse are destined to thrive beyond the wildest expectations of the classical poets. This is where Milton requests the Holy Spirit to fill him with wisdom about how things began. To show how the fall of man was actually part of God's broader design and that it was justifiable, Milton writes. At this point, Milton goes on to tell how Adam and Eve were betrayed. After being banished into hell by God, Satan is introduced as a serpent and the poem follows him and his demons to hell. On the ground next to a burning lake that emits darkness rather than light, Satan remains motionless in the aftermath of his fall. He proceeds to berate Beelzebub, his second in command, about their dire situation. It's clear that Satan has no remorse over betraying God, and he urges them to get their act together for a second go-around. Believing that God cannot be beaten, Satan wonders if they can begin to corrupt God's beneficial works in order to bring about their own destruction. They begin planning, but they don't comprehend that God intends to use their evil deeds for his good purposes. The rest of the fallen angels are summoned by Satan to join him on earth. Moloch and Belial, two of the fallen angels, are later referred to as lustful and vengeful gods. In the end, Satan's arrogance brought about his downfall, and he said that he preferred to be a servant in heaven to the king he had formerly been in hell. In order to fulfill Satan's orders, the fallen angels excavate the ground and unearth gold and other valuable minerals. Pandemonium, which means all the demons in Greek, is a massive temple built in a short period of time. Pandemonium is the site of a massive council of demons. According to Satan, all hope is not lost for the fallen angels, and they can rise again if they band together. Moloch is the first to speak after Satan has opened the floor to debate. Moloch, who was a fierce combatant during the conflict in heaven, longs for a new confrontation. There is nothing worse than living in hell, he argues, not even death. At this point, Belial speaks forward and joins the conversation. God hasn't punished them to the full extent of his power, according to him, and therefore he expects him to punish them more severely. If God had not enabled them to escape the flaming lake, they would not be alive today. God may be intending to pardon them in the future as a result. Belial, on the other hand, is not always in favor of peace. He's content to sit this one out and see what transpires. Next, Mammon speaks, urging the fallen angels to work hard so that they can build a kingdom in hell that matches or even surpasses that of heaven. The angels' attention is especially drawn to this debate. According to Beelzebub's report, God is building a new globe that will be populated by a species called man. In fact, he already favors them over the angels. Beelzebub ponders whether or not they could annihilate this cherished race in order to get their vengeance. As a result, the fallen angels unanimously approve this plan to be put into action. Both Beelzebub and Satan are in agreement. A scout is needed for the new planet, and Satan offers his services pretending to be a hero. The devil takes to the skies in search of the entrance to hell. It turns out to be 9 in total, with 3 each made of iron, brass, and adamantine. 2 otherworldly beings stand watch. To their surprise, Satan's minions reveal that they're actually his children and challenge him to a fight. When Satan was an angel, one of the specters, a snake-like woman with a gang of howling dogs about her waist, sprang from his head. Sin gave birth to a son named Death through this union. After that, Death raped her, giving birth to the pack of hounds that now torment her in her final moments on earth. The gates of hell are guarded by Sin and Death, who have the key. During his time as an angel, Satan unleashed one of the specters, a snake-like woman with a band of howling dogs wrapped around her waist. Sin gave birth to a son named Death through this union. The dogs that torture her were born as a result of Death's rape of her. Hell's gates are guarded by Sin and Death, who have the key. As Satan outlines his plan to avenge himself against God, the gatekeepers, Sin and Death, open up their doors to let him through. Chaos, the king of the abyss, takes Satan away from the gates and into a cloud of fire. Discord, confusion, and night, Chaos's henchmen, encircle him. Chaos is asked to help Satan with his plot. When Chaos agrees to help, he points him to the spot where the earth was formed. Behind him, Sin and Death construct a bridge from hell to earth, allowing demons to traverse over. Milton begs the divine muse in Book 3 to fill his mind with heavenly truth. As the reader ascends into heaven, they see God and his Son, Jesus, witnessing the events in hell. In light of Satan's exodus from hell, God is well aware of what will happen. Since free will is the only way humans can truly love, he doesn't regret giving them it, even if he knows they'll fail. For the sake of man's transgressions, God determines that he must show mercy and that a suitable victim must be sacrificed. God is pleased with the Son's prompt decision to give himself up. God can defeat hell by using his mortal Son. During his time on earth, Satan lands in what would later be known as China. There are no living things in the region, and it is utterly abandoned. In the distance, Satan sees a golden gate with steps leading down to earth in the distance. At the time, this was an entrance to heaven that could be seen from earth. While on earth, Satan sees another angel named Uriel and addresses him as a cherub or a lower-ranking angel. Satan pretends to be a newcomer to the earth and expresses interest in the new surroundings. Adam, the first man, lives in paradise, which Uriel is pleased to point out. The mountain known as Niphates, where Satan makes his home, is located immediately north of Eden. It brings back memories of how he used to be when he sees the beauty and innocence of earth. In spite of this, Satan recognizes that he is now the incarnation of hell and that he will never be able to be pardoned. The fact that Uriel is watching him suspiciously as he is arguing this is completely lost on him. Entering Eden, Satan takes a look around, admiring its animals and gorgeous plants. He observes the nakedness of the people, a man and a woman. A fresh race causes Satan to remember how much God loves them and to be jealous. Adam tells Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge, and he follows his instructions with interest. When Eve initially awoke and was told that she would be the mother of the human race, she reacted angrily to Adam's declaration. To exact his vengeance on Adam and Eve, Satan decides to trick them into breaking the one rule that God has given them. The following night, Uriel tells Gabriel about the shape-shifting cherub, and Gabriel decides to investigate further. He discovers Satan disguised as a toad talking into Eve's ear in the garden. To discover what Satan is doing in paradise, Gabriel asks to know in the end. Satan's rage gets the better of him, and he prepares to face Gabriel. An omen from on high arrives in the form of a pair of golden scales in the sky before the two may begin their duel. This is interpreted by Satan as a sign that he will be defeated and flees. After having a terrible dream in which an angel instructed her to eat from the tree of knowledge, Eve wakes up and tells Adam about it. Eve is soothed when Adam points out that they have free choice, thus this isn't a premonition of what will happen. Angel Raphael is dispatched to warn Adam of impending doom in heaven by God. Raphael visits Adam and Eve on earth and has a dinner with him, pointing out the distinctions between earthly and heavenly cuisine. Raphael relates the tale of Satan's fall from grace to Adam. According to him, God made a son who would govern heaven with him one day. While many angels were happy, one was enraged for a variety of reasons. Satan, who thought he deserved the same abilities as God and was jealous of the son, was the angry angel. With the help of his minions, the devil established himself as the supreme ruler of heaven. Abdiel was one of Satan's followers who turned back to God before Satan was expelled from heaven. While many of the angels were happy, one was furious. After being rejected by God because of his lack of power, Satan became enraged with the Son's success. In heaven, Satan built himself a throne and a group of followers. It was Abdiel who returned to God before Satan was banished from heaven. The fight between the angels and Satan's followers broke out shortly thereafter in heaven. The devil's henchmen have once again come up with amazing weapons to use, but the angels have begun burying them under enormous mountains. When war has lasted for 3 days, God decides that it is now time to put an end to the conflict and sends his Son to do just that. Satan and his followers are thrown into a pit dug by the Son of God as he goes out on a chariot. For 9 days, they plummet towards hell. Raphael tells Adam to be aware of Satan's plan to annihilate all of humanity. To tame them in God's eyes, Satan would try to have them commit a big sin, Adam is told. Here, Milton calls on Urania, the astronomy muse, to protect him as he connects the account of the war in heaven with that of Adam and Raphael. This is around halfway through the book. Raphael tells Adam that after the war, God wanted to create a new race in order to remove the memory of the betrayal of his angels. To demonstrate to the angels that his rule can grow endlessly and that the plans for earth and heaven to be united one day as one kingdom, God creates the earth and people in an empty portion of the world. Earth was made in God's Son's likeness, therefore he sent him down to make the world. The story is over, and Adam informs Raphael about his awakening. He awoke and wondered who he was, realizing that he could speak, move, and run, and shortly realized that he could. In God's voice, he learned that he was created to rule over all other creatures on earth and that he was simply asked to refrain from eating from the tree of knowledge. After a while, Adam claims, he began to wish for a companion, and God made Eve specifically for him. While Adam slept, God created Eve from one of his ribs. When Adam first saw Eve, he was smitten. Raphael is on his way back to heaven from earth. For Adam and Eve's genuine disobedience to be shown, Milton explains that he must first reveal them. Now the poem must take a terrible turn, he explains. He invites Urania, the muse of inspiration, to come and visit him as he sleeps so that she might provide him with inspiration for his writing. Satan slips back into the Garden of Eden the following night. It is Satan's decision to adopt the appearance of a snake that causes him to study the creatures in the garden. Even though Adam and Eve had been granted access to this new planet, Satan is saddened by his inability to do so. After finding Eve alone in the garden, Satan approaches her and begins charming her. In the garden, Eve is shocked to hear a creature talk, and Satan tells her that he obtained the capacity to speak after eating one of the fruits from the tree of knowledge. Satan argues that God merely wants Adam and Eve to prove their independence, despite the fact that Eve claims God warned her not to eat from that tree. God had told Eve that eating from the tree would lead to her death, but since the serpent had eaten from it and survived, she may be able to do the same. If God has to restrict it, she argues that the fruit must be extremely potent. She then eats an apple that she had just plucked from the tree. The earth trembles and nature sighs in response to this. With this, man has succumbed to the abyss. After falling from grace, she instantly wants to find Adam so they can eat the fruit from the tree together so that they are equals again. When Eve tells Adam what she has done, he is shocked but quickly decides that he must eat the fruit as well because he cannot live without Eve. When Adam eats a piece of fruit, he becomes obsessed with Eve. Once they learn they've been cast out of God's favor and lost paradise, Adam and Eve are devastated. Only the tree and how much it has cost them are the only things they have learned from this experience. They have come to recognize that they are ashamed of their own nakedness and cover themselves with leaves. After committing the transgression, Adam and Eve become enraged with each other, but neither of them accepts any guilt. In heaven, God is aware of Adam and Eve's consumption of the fruit immediately. They tell God that they tried everything to stop it, and God admits that he did and absolves them of all responsibility. In order to speak to the couple, he sends his son to earth. When the son inquires as to whether or not Adam and Eve had eaten fruit from the tree, Eve accuses the serpent of persuading her to do so. Because he doesn't recognize Satan as the serpent, the son condemns all snakes to a life of slithering around on the ground. The son orders that all childbirths will be terrible for women, and that food must be gathered and harvested from the land as a form of punishment for the marriage. The son returns to heaven after completing this punishment. Across the way, sin and death meet with Satan to congratulate him on his successful mission outside of paradise's walls. This will be the beginning of the end for him as well. Satan is not permitted to leave hell and take control of earth as he sees fit. In Pandemonium, Satan tells his supporters of his accomplishment, only to discover that all of his followers had been turned into snakes. Because of the punishment meted out to the son, Satan has been reduced to the form of a snake as well. In light of the fact that sin and death have arrived on our planet, God instructs his angels to remain until Judgment Day, when they must return to hell and join Satan and his minions there. A new earth is then decreed by God. He alters the axis of the earth so that future generations will be subjected to more harsh weather conditions. Discord arrives on earth as a result of the fall of man and the rise of death. It breaks Adam's heart to watch these changes and to know that he was responsible for them. In Adam's heart, he wishes he could bear all of the consequences. When Eve approaches Adam, he is enraged with her and questions why God even created her in the first place. After eating the fruit, Eve begs for his pardon and accepts responsibility for her actions. Only their love and unity can save them, she says him. Adam forbids the suicide suggestion made by Eve. Consolatory words from Adam to Eve after she has calmed down: we must live with our mistakes. He comes to the conclusion that they must beseech God for pardon and plead for mercy. They then get down on their knees and pray for them. They beg God to let his Son bear the price for all of humanity's crimes, and he accedes to their request after hearing their pleas. However, he informs them that if they live a virtuous and clean life, he would bring them back to paradise when they die. God gives Adam a glimpse into the future via the eyes of one of his angels. The vision depicts several biblical events, including the story of Jesus Christ. Even though Eve has given birth to humans, Adam promises her that she will always be Eve. She agrees and promises to do her best to follow God's commandments and live in peace. They are heartbroken to leave Eden, but they realize that they have been granted the entire planet. Also, students are taught that they are able to communicate with God from any location. The future Adam sees through the eyes of the Archangel Michael brings him much comfort, and he is taken aback by how much good will come from his bad deed. Then he leads the couple out of Eden, where he joins the other angels in prayer. The garden's entrance will always be guarded by a sword of flames that Michael now wields. Adam and Eve set out to discover a new home for themselves, walking hand in hand. Characters: Hell's monarch, the devil. The leader of the fallen angels of hell. Following his challenge to Jesus' new status in heaven, Satan was banished from the throne of God. In heaven, Satan established his own throne with the help of many followers before launching a fight with God's devoted angels. They are tied to a fire-filled lake in hell at the end of the fight. Satan and the other fallen angels are released by God because he knows that fate requires it. Avenging himself on God, Satan slips inside Eden to infiltrate God's most prized creation, humans. God's love for man often causes Satan to feel guilty or jealous, which causes him to have periods of hesitation in the poem. Adam, the first man. He is the father of humanity, as well as the guardian of paradise itself. When Adam first meets God, he is filled with gratitude and eager to serve him. When Adam is feeling lonely, God produces Eve from one of his ribs and Adam falls head over heels in love with her immediately. When Eve offers Adam an apple, he accepts it out of curiosity but then regrets it. His first bad thoughts after the fall are carnal. Only after realizing that it is unto him to make amends to God does Adam stop being so enraged and accusatory toward Eve in the aftermath. Eve, the first woman. The mother of all humankind. When Adam was sleeping, a rib was removed from his side and used to produce Eve. Compared to Adam, Eve demonstrates a higher level of curiosity and willingness to take risks. Because he thinks she's more vulnerable, the devil picks her to be the first one he tempts. Eve initially refuses to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge, but after Satan assures her that eating will give him tremendous power, she eventually accepts. Eve is remorseful and ashamed of her deeds after she eats the fruit. In her mind, the only way to save Adam is to take her own life. Despite her fear, Eve accepts their expulsion from the garden. On the 9th of December 1608, in London, England, a child named John Milton was born. Milton, the son of a composer, originally planned to join the Anglican priesthood when he was younger, but he soon got dissatisfied and turned to poetry instead. At the age of 15, his oldest known work was published in 1623, making Milton the youngest author ever to have had a work published. Milton began studying at Christ's College in London in 1630 and graduated in 1632 with a Master of Arts degree. Milton went on to study at Cambridge University, and it was there that he began to write poetry as a career. To better prepare himself for his future as a poet, Milton lived in his father's country residence in Buckinghamshire from 1632 to 1638. During this time, he read Latin and Greek classics as well as historical texts on the church and politics. In the years 1638 to 1639, he traveled through France and Italy, meeting many of the leading literary figures of the day in France and Italy. It wasn't long after his return to England that John established himself as a writer in London and began to publish religious and political pamphlets. Milton's political writings established him as one of the greatest pamphleteers of his era. 2 weeks after they married, he divorced Mary Powell due to their differing temperaments, but the two of them reconciled 2 weeks later in 1645. Before Powell's death in 1652, Milton and Powell were parents to 4 children. Milton was appointed Foreign Secretary by the government of the Commonwealth in 1649 after supporting Parliament in the Civil War between parliamentarians and royalists. When Milton became entirely blind in 1654, he was obliged to dictate his prose with the help of poet Andrew Marvell. Sadly, Catherine Woodcock, the woman he married again in 1656 and had their first child with, died shortly after giving birth to their first child. Milton was fined and imprisoned for his support of Parliament during the restoration of Charles II in 1660. Paradise Lost, Milton's best-known and most important poem, was first published in 1667. Many years before he began writing the poem, Milton was working as both a prose writer and a government employee. After finishing Paradise Lost and penning Paradise Regained, 1671, and the poetic drama Samson Agonistes, Milton's writing career reached its zenith in the final years of his life, 1671. It wasn't until his death on November 8, 1674, that he married a third time, this time to Elizabeth Mindshall. The beautiful poetry of Milton, who died over 3 centuries ago, continues to influence English poetry well into the 21st century, long after he was considered the finest English poet since Shakespeare. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.